Welcome to the Mukilteo Football Show. My name is Miles. Wildcard weekend underway. NFL playoffs underway. That's a lot of fun. Today, not the best games, not the worst games. The Chargers-Texans game was tense and competitive, until the third quarter, until, the interception started adding up. And Pittsburgh came out in the second half and at least made it worth watching the second half. We've seen a lot of blowouts in the wild card weekend. So be it. I always talk about this, I feel like every year, but I'm always conflicted. Yes, I want wild stuff to happen in the wild card game. But I also, I don't want the Broncos or the Steelers in the divisional round. Just a waste of a good game. They're not going to win. And if they get to the AFC Championship, then they're the Cinderella story. They just ruin one of the championship games. I want the best of the best. I want Lamar versus Allen. I want Mahomes. Of course, Josh Allen plays tomorrow, so hopefully I'm not eating these words, but there was some good stuff here. Chargers, Houston started out kind of a defensive battle. As I was cracking open a beer, sitting down with the TV, got Waylon with me, playoff football. This is something I've looked forward to my whole life. The whole basis of this podcast is around the legacy and filling of the history books of the NFL, how much that has meant to me across time, back to the 90s, back to when I was a kid. And cracking open that first beer, just one beer, just watching Waylon with the beer. He had his puffs, I had my Alaskan Amber. And I was like, man, it's kind of neat that one of the things for Houston, for the Houston Texans has been that they get to have this moment. 8 of the last 14 years, we have started the playoffs in Houston. I know Kirk and I talked about that in the preview, but it's kind of nice to give the Houston Texans this little slice of NFL history. It's not much, but it's something kind of cool. It's notable, at least. It's been 22 years since the Houston Texans started playing football, but they're still the newest team on the block. So, they don't have a Curly Lambeau, George Halas, Jim Brown, history. They don't have that or anything even close to it. They don't even have Seahawks type of history, 80s and stuff. So just a little nice thing for them. And most importantly, much more important than the scheduling quirk, is that they keep winning these games. Since 2011, Houston Texans have opened up the playoffs 8 times, and they are 6-2, including last year and this year, of course, both by C.J. Stroud. So props to them. Now, they'll be hoping to get their first win in the divisional round, but they are certainly no slouches. The Houston Texans are not just, cannon fodder, and that's an upgrade for what they looked like they were in the 2000s. The story of the game, of course, is the Chargers. This wasn't as dramatic as blowing the 27-0 lead that they did. I believe that was 2022. Then when they blew that to the Jaguars, but it was football-wise sort of equivalent. First of all, that they were only up 6-0. The fact that it was only 6-0 was almost as egregious as anything else. It should have at least been 10-0, and it probably should have been 17-0. And the Chargers just, they blew it. The Texans' offense was completely in hibernation mode. Turnovers were happening all over the place, and the Chargers couldn't do anything with it. And then my correspondents at Nickelodeon tell me that Nickelodeon did this bit where Jim Harbaugh was jokingly kidnapped by a SpongeBob villain called the Dirty Bubble. Haven't seen it, but that is an elite name and an elite villain, the Dirty Bubble. And from the point that the Dirty Bubble kidnapped Jim Harbaugh on Nickelodeon, that's when everything went wrong. The Chargers blew it from there. The Texans offense got going late in the second quarter. The Chargers were dominating. They got another interception. They were in the red zone again. And then they threw an interception. And Stroud just came to life. I mean, it was as if you can't give an NFL team 7 chances to get back into the game. Because that's seriously what the Chargers did. It seriously was like 6 or 7 chances in the first half. Unbelievable. And it was 3rd and 16. Things looking bleak. I'm sure the announcers were talking about the lack of yards from C.J. Stroud and the Texans offense. And I remember them mentioning like the total points that they had scored in the last 8-9 weeks was really low. And they were talking about the struggles, and that's when that broken play happens. C.J. Stroud rolls to the right, finds Hutchinson way down there on a post route. I think it was, probably 35-yard catch, and then Nico Collins gets a big 41-yarder right after that, and then a touchdown. Suddenly it's 7-6. Chargers blow it and punt it back before the end of the half. Texans get a field goal. They're up 10-6. And they had no business being up at halftime after their offense had done nothing. But that's Chargers football, right? I don't know. Jim Harbaugh, you wanted to think that he has like changed the culture a little bit, and this happens to all teams. So, but just doesn't it seem like it happens to the Chargers most? The next sequence in the second half when Joe Mixon for the Texans sets out to do like a halfback pass. They're getting greedy. Remember, this Joe Mixon does have a Super Bowl passing touchdown to his name, so show some respect. But he pulls it down and he fumbles. Chargers get yet another turnover. And they turn it over on downs, give it back to the Texans. Texans score again. Game's getting out of hand. The Chargers did have a chance to get back in there. There was early in the fourth quarter, about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They're down 23-6 now. You're thinking the game is spiraling away. Hebert gets sacked. Hebert gets sacked again. It's 3rd and 26. And then just out of nowhere, Justin Herbert hits Ladd McConkey right up the middle, sprints up the field for an 88-yard touchdown. And everyone's got to perk up a little bit. Even Waylon perked up a little bit. Ooh. Waylon says to me, we were going to go, thought 3rd and 26. We thought that we were just going to get a short dump off, and they were going to punt the ball, and that punt would signal the beginning of garbage time for this game. This is all Waylon speaking. But instead, this 88-yard play makes it a 10-point game. 23-13 with 10 minutes left in the game. Like, okay, maybe there's something here. Yet, because it's the Chargers, the extra point is blocked. Dicker tries to bat it down, but that doesn't matter because it's a fumble, basically. Texans return it and get the 2-point conversion, defensive 2-point conversion. So instead of 23-13, it's 25-12. And I love the NBC or whichever channel it was on today. It's still 2 possessions. It's like that doesn't matter. That one of the possessions needs to be a touchdown and not a field goal. That is a really big deal. Stop talking about everything in terms of possessions. It really matters when one of the possessions turns from field goal to touchdown. It's one of my pet peeves, but yeah. We'll talk a lot more Texans as we go forth in the preview with Kirk. But for Chargers, this is bad, and I rip on Justin Herbert a lot, but I just can't help but repeat myself because it's been 5 years of this. But this was Justin Herbert at Oregon, elite arm, elite processing, but no real success, no real fire, no spark. Does good in the beginning of the game when he knows what the coaches want out of him. Doesn't do good when it's on him, you know? I honestly, I don't know the guy, obviously, but this is so much data of this. And every season, from Oregon to the Chargers, which now we have like eight season sample across these college and NFL, on paper, they're amazing. By the end of the year, they're not considered to be a real contender. They just they politely take the lowest accolade available. We'll take, one of the New Year's Bowls, but not the playoff. They'll take a wildcard game, but we're not going to win one. Like, honestly, would Justin Herbert even want to beat the other team? I mean, that's really confrontational to end the other team's season like that. That's really mean. He might not want to. Oh, so sorry. Just, I don't know. I just can't get over that this keeps happening. And some will say, Chargers, they're ahead of schedule. Harbaugh's first year. Herbert's still young. He's got a rocket arm. I mean, God, he looks good on some throws. But there's some merit to that. But there was a chance here with Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, that defense lining up with the start of this new regime. That this was a window. This was an opportunity and a time to strike. And Chargers didn't do it. So you see Texans in the next round. The Wildcard night game, Saturday. The Baltimore Ravens defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers 28-14 in a game that looked like it was going to be one of those legendary postseason blowouts, but wasn't. It could not have started worse for Pittsburgh fans, or scarier for Pittsburgh fans than the first two drives. Lamar Jackson. So the Steelers come out, they take the ball at kickoff, which was controversial because the offense has been struggling. But Mike Tomlin obviously trying to get a spark, make a statement, get something unique here, and they have to punt, and it's a good punt. Goes down to the 5-yard line. So Lamar Jackson jogs out on the field. They got 95 yards to go, and they just do it. It's Lamar Jackson running like 6 times in a row. Then it's Derrick Henry running like 4 times in a row. The Steelers are hanging on for dear life. They've given up like 75 of those 95 yards. They're fighting. There's just Ravens Steelers. They're still fighting. They stuff Justice Hill and create a 3rd and 13. And then Lamar's like, well, we can pass too, and just air attack. Perfect strike to Rashad Bateman on the back line of the end zone. That is frightening for anybody who has to face the Ravens, and Steelers fans especially, to see that in that first drive. Then the Steelers punt again, and the Ravens do what was, a statistically notable drive, 10 runs, 10-run drive. I think it was 70 yards. For a touchdown. Just amazing. And yes, they bring up the graphic, Amazon, play selection, run 10, pass 0. Well, no. Because 3 of them were scrambles. So I don't know, what does selection mean? It's clearly they tried to pass it 3 times and tried to run it 7 times. They ended up running it 10 times. But maybe I'm using the word selection wrong. I don't know. Every play, every result of the play is not the selection. There are options and whatever. Another ramble that I don't need to go down. But point is, frightening for Steelers fans to be down 14-0 at that point. 2 huge drives from the Ravens. Lamar Jackson's got 11 carries for 64 yards. Henry's got 11 carries for 92 yards at that point after 2 drives. I mean, it had to be just pooping in your boots if you're Pittsburgh. And then they get another touchdown at the half. They're up 21-0. A lot of people were thinking okay, well, let's start to bring up the Pro Football Reference page of Buffalo, New England in 2021 here, because that's the last true all-timer demolition that has happened in the postseason. And, when Buffalo scored, I believe, on every one of their drives against Mac Jones and the hapless Patriots that day. But unlike Mac Jones and the hapless Patriots, the Steelers came in the second half, put up some fight. They got a stop, something that those Patriots never did. Russell Wilson hit a 98-yard drive. So down 21-0. Russell hits his own crucial 3rd and long. Big one to Pickens, big one to Williams, big one to Van Jefferson. Touchdown, 98-yard drive, 21-7. You're like, okay, got something. At least it's not a huge blowout. And they sack Lamar Jackson on first down, an 11-yard loss. This was like a moment in time at the beginning of the third quarter that will be lost forever now. But you're like, okay, it's 2nd and 21. The Steelers just scored. The whole second half is ahead of them. There could be something here. But then Lamar converts it, and a couple first downs later, hands it off to Derrick Henry for his 44-yard touchdown, his second touchdown of the day. Now they're up 28-7, and it just kind of felt like it spiraled away from there. The Steelers did score after that. They brought it 28-14, but at that point, the whole second half wasn't ahead of them. There just wasn't quite the optimism, from a viewer like me. But for a moment in time, the game was competitive, so it's all you can ask. So good for Derrick Henry. 26 carries, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's already one of the all-time, and he's up there. He's had some postseason success. So his career playoff stats look good. They were already good with the Titans. He adds to it, with this 186 yards. He's above Eddie George now. He's past Eddie George, past Jerome Bettis, Curtis Martin, Eric Dickerson. He is up there where he should be in the career playoff rushing yards. But not touchdowns. So good for him to get 2 touchdowns. He only had 4 playoff touchdowns coming into this, which is exactly the story of the Titans in the playoffs. A bunch of move between the 20 stuff, but never any touchdowns. So good for him to kind of pad that part of his presumably Hall of Fame resume. So Steelers are out. Ravens are scary. Lamar Jackson got a little beat up today, but they do have some extra rest. I guess it depends if they play Saturday or not, actually. But you got to think he won't be running that much against the next team, whether it be, the Bills or... So they would play either the Bills or Broncos. Yeah, they'll play Bills or Texans. If Broncos win, they would go to Chiefs. So they're presumably rooting for the Broncos. The Ravens are. They would love to take on the Texans again in the divisional round. But we'll talk about more with them with Kirk in the divisional preview. Steelers, this just becomes a statistic in the narrative of their decade. In the 2020s, they're 0-4 in the playoffs. They've been blown out 4 times by the Browns, Chiefs, Bills, now Ravens. This may actually have been the closest game of those. They did make a desperate comeback attempt against the Browns, but I don't remember exactly how close they got. So not a good look for Tomlin. The Steelers, they got this good enough to make the playoffs, not good enough to compete for the Super Bowl thing, just like Justin Herbert does. So he's got that too. And really, it's been like this. This was this way in the 2010s as well. And it's funny, I'm guilty. There's always dividing things by decade, but if you don't count the 2010 season, which is doing a lot of work for Mike Tomlin's stats last decade, he's just lucky that 2010 season was part of the 2010s. Because otherwise, the 9 other years of the 2010s, the most recent ones, combined with this, last 15 years, it's bad. They're 3-9 in the playoffs, and 3 of those wins are over Matt Moore, backup, 3rd string actually, AJ McCarron, backup, and Alex Smith, game manager. Just good enough to make it, not good enough to be a legitimate contender. You got to think something has got to change in Pittsburgh. because it can't be this way. And it's been the offensive side of the ball this whole decade. They've invested in the defense. They thought they could win by defense. You need more offensive firepower, period. And we'll see what the Steelers can do with that next season. All right, my name is Miles. We'll be back tomorrow. Bye.